This is an Ear Candy Audiobooks production of Escape to Phnom Penh, the first book in the Hot Asian Nights trilogy by Kurt Dysan. Performed by David Butler. Copyright 2014 by Kurt Dysan. Performance copyright 2020 by Ear Candy Audiobooks. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. New in Town. The Asian Nights guest house and bar sat on a busy side street just off the riverfront in Phnom Penh, incongruously tucked between a chain pizza place and a small store where an old woman sold almost exactly the same items as every shop near it. Bags of sugary snacks, cooking oil, beer, bottled water, fish sauce, and tea. Like most of the buildings, it was a narrow and deep shophouse, left over from the French colonial era. Rattan chairs and glass-topped tables spilled out of the open front onto the sidewalk, and a row of motorbikes cluttered the curb in front. A bright sun shone clear and warm on Sarah's first morning in Cambodia's capital. It was so different from Australia, where she'd been just a few hours, and a lifetime ago. So far, she liked what she saw. The Pearl of the Orient, the guidebooks called the city. The pearl didn't shine with as much luster as she'd expected, but it was interesting and different and alive. Sarah ran her fingers through her shoulder-length black hair and smiled as she walked out into the sunshine to take a seat at the table across from her friend Gina. Gina, the early bird, had been up and out ahead of her. The dishes in front of her showed she'd finished breakfast. Sarah picked up a menu and stared at it, but she wasn't in a rush to eat. She let her eyes take in the scene. At a table inside, an overweight man in his 50s sat alone, eating a hamburger and drinking beer from a can. Anchor, the label said. He read an English-language newspaper, marking it up with a pen. He had a gray beard and a T-shirt that advertised some long-forgotten Rolling Stones tour. Probably a pensioner with a small income, she decided. The rest of the tables were empty. A girl stood inside, out of the sun, watching a game show on television. The girl was a petite Khmer, Cambodian, and at first Sarah had taken her for a teenager. None of the girls Sarah had seen in the short time since she'd arrived looked old enough to be called young women, but she learned they were. Khmer women looked young well into life. She assumed it was one major reason so many men traveling alone came here. It seemed that depravity craved innocence. The guest house pleased her, exactly what she wanted and expected. Reviews on the internet had prepared her for the basic level of accommodations. This one was typical for the area and price range. She'd picked it because it catered to those roaming on the cheap, wanting to make their money last. The city, especially this area, had a ton of such places, each offering basic rooms with a ceiling fan, extra for the few with aircon, a bar, and a minimal restaurant. Each place offered its own pluses and minuses, but they all catered to young travelers who would happily forego room service and the other trappings of the business hotels for a cheap place to stay that didn't mind a little rowdiness from a party crowd. This one, convenient to the riverfront, had gotten rave reviews from the backpacker crowd. She and Gina would be in town at least for a few days, and they intended to party, to have a good time. The kind of action they were looking for picked up after dark. That made it a perfect base of operations, a good place to start. Later, they might follow their noses somewhere else, another place and other people. Sitting in a rattan chair, looking at pictures of familiar breakfasts that looked slightly odd and not at all like she thought they should, Sarah felt the world around her subtly shift gears. Life picked up a little momentum. Her pulse quickened, matching its pace. Life had moved in a slow and surreal motion for some time now. It took her a while to catch on, but eventually she saw she wasn't on a track to provide the thrill she expected and wanted. Even the breakup of her marriage hadn't turned out to be so much dramatic as frustrating and boring. This trip was her escape, her break from her dull path. "Glad we came?" she asked Gina. She hoped Gina shared her excitement at the reality of the place. When she'd mentioned her idea, most of her friends thought she was just talking, spinning an idea she had no intention of executing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?